Hello and welcome to the Volleycast. I am your host, Joe Trinzi, and on the other line, it's John Grossman. John, how you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Doing good. John, you were a attendee on our premium webinar this Saturday with Dan Fisher. He's talking about his approach to training attacking and what we call the go for it mentality, sort of this aggressive approach to attacking. And I wanted to get your perspective. So this was a webinar primarily for college coaches. And so a little bit of a kind of maybe like a higher level approach. And you are a college coach. At least last season you were. We'll see if there is a college season this year. Hopefully you will be a college coach again. Which I think is a reasonable possibility. But you've also been involved in club volleyball for a long time, really kind of at a lot of levels, you know what I mean? Like you've coached older teams, you've coached younger teams. So what I wanted to do was call you up and get your take on the webinar, but specifically how the concepts that Dan talked about apply to coaching youth sports. And we thought that there might be some listeners that might kind of enjoy and benefit from that conversation. Just a couple like housekeeping notes before we get into that. We got our next webinar coming up with Nate Go, technical coordinator for the men's national team. He was with them for the last quad in Rio. I got to know him pretty well. Sort of my counterpart on the men's side. He's still working with the men's program, and he's going over to Stanford after that. So just going from one successful program to the other. Nate's a really smart guy. He was with Nebraska before that. So he just hates losing, I think, is kind of the deal with Nate. But no, we're going to talk about stats and analytics, and particularly kind of the most effective ways to share that and visualize that sort of information with the rest of your staff and with your players. So kind of a big approach to that. Nate's really good at that. I've learned a lot from him. So we'll talk about that. It's going to be on Saturday the 25th. We're recording this on Monday the 20th. So you have a few more days to sign up for that. And then the next one after that, so in a little less than 2 weeks, we got Ben Josephson coming down from Canada, from Trinity Western University men's program. And he was also one of the assistants with me for the Team Canada women's national team. So that's going to be on Sunday, May the 3rd. And what we're talking about is basically a concept from the men's game that may apply to the women's game. So we know a lot of times we see some of the trends going on with sort of maybe the biggest, most physical athletes first before maybe they come on and the rest of us figure it out. So he coaches a really, probably arguably the strongest collegiate program in North America, if you counted the men's teams on both sides of the border. Trinity Western might be the strongest program. Anyway, so we're going to talk about jump serving, hybrid serving, just kind of some of that stuff, and then back row attack. So maybe just all of the concepts that he's seeing on the men's side and which one of those concepts may or may not apply on the women's side. So a little bit of a higher level seminar. I think people might enjoy that a lot. And hey, a lot of us, you're in coaching programs and maybe your budgets are frozen or you're restricted or different things like that. And if you want to be a part of one of these webinars, just shoot me an email and we can figure something out for when your budget gets going again or this or that, or just whatever. You come up and mow my lawn. No, I don't know. No, we'll just figure out a way. If you're fired up to connect with one of these coaches, let's not have the budget be an issue. So just contact me. We'll figure out a way to make it work because I'm really enjoying these conversations. We've had some coaches tune in. I think we've had coaches maybe be at 3, maybe even 4 of these sessions. We keep them to about 20 coaches a piece. Like they're pretty small, really good discussions. So I don't want you to miss out on that just because maybe the program that would normally be paying for your community or for your continuing education is just kind of a little frozen up right now. Okay, so with that advertisement out of the way, John, what were some of your takeaways from this webinar that you think that you're thinking about when you go to coach your club or when you're doing programs working with middle schoolers or high schoolers this summer, in theory? What are you thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, Dan's argument for his style of play was very compelling, and it's not the first coach that I've heard talk about it in this way. But The main crux of his argument is don't worry so much about getting blocked. Take big swings a lot and good things will happen, I think is a good way to kind of boil it down. And, I think that's going to mean some different things at some different levels when I'm thinking about it in the club perspective. I work the technical director for our club, so I'm working with our U11s all the way through U18s. And so we have this big continuum of where we're at in the learning process and where we're at in how we're trying to play volleyball. And when we do a lot of our stats and we take a look at our teams, in the last year and a half, it's become more apparent that our club needs to get more focused on our offense. Our serve pass is good, we're digging balls, but when we're attacking, we're not scoring as many points as other teams. And a lot of that was our focus in the gym was being good at serve pass and digging. But we wanted to take a look at what our teams were doing and, what levels were we kind of similar to our opponents and what levels we were falling behind. And we saw that as we got older, we weren't hitting as well. Our hitting percentages were not comparable to our opponents at tournaments. So, I started looking at some information, had some good conversations with you. And the big thing that popped out was best NCAA hitters are getting blocked more than they're making errors. And I go back and I look at our best hitters and we're at 20% error, 1% block. So, I think that it wasn't necessarily a skill thing. I think it was a little bit more of how they were thinking about the game. And, we talk about these perception and action loops, and what you see is how you react. But a thing that not a lot of people talk about is intention. What are you trying to do? And we can kind of look at our training from our younger players, 11s, 12s, sometimes 13s and 14s. Hey, jump and attack. And getting them to do that because they're uncomfortable is the main hurdle. And then as we're getting older, they're very conscientious about the errors that they're making because it's a direct point for the other team. And, hey, I got that ball in, which was my goal 2 years ago, and I'm feeling good about it. And I think that was kind of where we were falling behind. We're being too conservative on what we're trying to accomplish as opposed to what we were actually accomplishing. So that's how I'm thinking about it, is on that continuum. And I think it's a big thing to kind of judge where your teams are at and making sure that you're kind of talking about what they're trying to accomplish at the correct skill level that they're at.
Yeah, I think it's worthwhile kind of talking about that idea that being on a continuum, something that Dan talked about, is like, okay, you can't just be totally reckless. You do have to consider, you have to go after it, but okay, there's a certain point when aggressiveness becomes recklessness. And there's a certain point when playing smart becomes playing timid, so managing your swing becomes timid, something like that. And, we want to kind of strive to walk this like aggressive and smart play and all that. One thing that you noted was just about getting blocked versus making errors. I think it's a really worthwhile distinction, even for players at young ages to start learning. That was something when Ryan McGuire came out, head coach Baylor came out to New Jersey. Back in the days when we could have live coaching clinics. That was February, right? That was first weekend of February.
Yep.
That was barely more than 2 months ago, less than 3 months ago. Seems like forever ago that 60 coaches could get in a room and together and talk volleyball. But that he came out and he said that was one of his major things. He puts it up on the board, how often you're making unforced errors versus how often you're getting blocked. So I too picked up on that. And Baylor and Pitt have been two of the biggest rising programs. You have your traditional powers in NCAA volleyball that have been good forever. And there's some statistic where if you look at the total national championships, there's only like 7 teams in all of NCAA that have won it. It's like Stanford, Penn State, Texas, Nebraska, Washington, and then like Pacific and Long Beach State. And then so since then, that's like all of the I'm probably missing somebody there, but that's like all of the teams that have won a national championship since like 1980. Okay, so you have all those. And then Baylor and Pitt. They're kind of two of these programs that are really on the upswing, and Ryan and Dan have been at their program for too long. So I'm finding it pretty interesting that these are programs that are big on the rise, and they're really emphasizing this aggressive mentality. So that really stood out to me. Here's a statistic that I looked up. I was just curious. I knew this to be a general fact, but I wanted to maybe share some specific numbers here. So I'm looking at the Olympic statistics from 2016. Jordan Larson has been paid a lot of money to play volleyball in her coaching career, and she's really good. She took 220 swings in the 2016 Olympics. She made 8 unforced errors. So first of all, that's pretty impressive. Our club players make 8 errors in one game. Somehow. They only had 7 swings, and somehow they made 8 errors. No. So she only made 8 swings, 8 unforced errors, and 220 swings. And she got blocked 14 times. So she's getting blocked twice as much as she's making unforced errors. So first of all, part of that is she's hitting the ball in the court a lot. That is a really, really low error percentage. It's like 4% error. So she can hit the ball in a lot. And part of that's just a high level of skill. Okay, so you have maybe just a stylistic of being more careful or more aggressive. And then you just also have your skill level. You have a high level of skill, you don't miss much. And you're big and you're strong and you jump high. Okay, you can do all this things easier to find the court. But just that ratio is worth telling. We're talking about the best NCAA hitters. Maybe they get to 1-1. Usually, that's the best individual hitters. It's be rare to have a team that would quite be 1-1. Dan shared some of his Pitt stuff, and they were not 1-1. They were a bit below 1-1, but they were still significantly higher, the highest in the ACC in terms of a greater proportion of their errors were forced errors, blocks, as opposed to unforced errors than any other team in the conference, and they weren't quite at 1-1. And then you go up to the Olympics, and you see a player who's been, just incredible amount of Olympic and professional success, and she's almost 2-1 the other way. So that's a really telling statistics. And as you talked about, it's not uncommon. You'll see high school players. They could be 10-1. They could make 10 unforced errors and only get blocked 1 time or something like that. So I think it's worth just letting hitters know that. And do you find that hitters have a harder time when they get blocked than when they make an unforced error? Do you find it's like harder psychologically on them?
For sure. Coaching, the 16s team this year and talking with players, we've had outsides, big arms, 6-footers jumping out the gym, and, they get blocked. And usually the conversation is great to start having in practice. You got to start building this framework of intention and attitude, while you're in the gym. You can take a minute to talk. But every time I've pulled the player off, that we're in practice, big swing, gets roofed. The other side of the net, the blockers are all hyped up, jumping around. Everybody's doing their roof or whatever they're doing these days. And, you go up to that player and you're like, hey, I like your swing. And you could just always tell on their face. They're like, what is this coach talking about?
Yeah.
I just got roofed and made that girl's day. And, a lot of times they'll tell you, or they'll tell me, yeah, but she blocked me. And I'm like, yeah, but did you hit the ball really hard? Yeah. Okay. And how many times have you been doing that? A lot. And how many times did she block you? Well, that was the first time today. Okay, great. So you've been crushing balls. This is going to happen. And, when you look at them, when they make that hitting error in the net or out, it's like, oh, I can do this a little bit better. Or they go after their set, or, hey, I need a better set. And just asking them, hey, like, what does that matter? Like, why do you care what she just did? And I don't know. Okay. I don't know either, and then, you start to have that conversation. Hey, this is what, Division I players are doing. This is what the good college players are doing. This is what international players are doing. And, you have to be careful when you start to change his attitude that you hold that up. You're always propping the player up when they take the good swing and get blocked. It can never be, hey, you got blocked at 24-23 and they just won. Like, what are you doing? No, you got to always be, hey, we're going to try and break fingers out there. We're going to try and hit people in the face. We're just crushing balls. Like, that's all we care about right now. You get a good set, you're going to go smash it. And, there's definitely that disconnect. in the beginning. And I think when you think about it a little bit more, a lot of players have been playing for a long time. They've been playing 11, 12, 13. And at those age groups, there is no block.
They never get blocked. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, people can barely get their fingertips over the net. And
Yes.
it's just all about hitting the ball in, hitting the ball in. And then around 14s, usually you start seeing some 6-foot kids who are jumping out the gym, and that's when you start seeing these girls get over the net. That's when they first start getting blocked. And when a girl gets her first block, it's a very memorable experience for her.
Yes.
And they freak out, and that's a direct challenge to what you just tried to do. And I think that kind of stays there. You're 16, you've been playing for 6 years, but you've only been learning how to deal with getting blocked for 1, 2, or 3 years. And it's just that not quite sure how to handle it. At least that's in my experience. And talking them through it, I think is an important thing that a coach has to do.
There's just a whole bunch of stuff that you said there that's kind of, I don't know, making me think of a few things. First of all, one of the things that's making me think is we need to possibly emphasize the value of tooling the block more with young kids, because I think it's possible that they don't always connect that to being a kill. Because if I remember the three tools that I just got, I don't feel as bad about the roof, because I'm like, okay, I'm still up 2 on you. But if I don't really register that as a valuable kill, which I don't think that a lot of high school hitters always do. I think that certainly a lot of college and definitely international hitters. I know the professional, especially like the old veterans with aching knees, they're like, yeah, I'd rather just get a kill. It's like way easier. You know what I mean? They really take pride on their ability to tool the block, and they really value that. And I don't think that always high school kids do. It's almost like, well, the blocker just messed up. Almost if they tool the block, they almost feel like they took a bad swing just because the blocker could touch it. So I wonder if that's kind of like the sort of like I don't know, is it the contrapositive? If I'm using that, I don't know if I'm using that term right, of what you said, is where like you're trying to cushion the blow for when they do get blocked. And I'm wondering if also you can amplify the reward of when they score a point off the block. And that, just thinking about information that we can give to players, we can compare how often that they hit out versus get blocked. I'm wondering also, it'd be nice for them to know how often you tool versus how often you get blocked.
Yeah.
Something like that, or how often you tool the block versus how often you hit out. Things like that. But maybe just some running counts. I'm a big fan of statistics for just in general, but like definitely for the younger you are I don't mean to say I'm a big fan of statistics. I'm a big fan of any statistic that you show should be like an easily digestible comparison. I don't think hitting efficiency is a great statistic for anybody really, but especially for when you're younger, because it just sort of boils down to, I'd like my hitting efficiency to be higher. You tell them, what's the hitting efficiency? Is that good? And that's kind of what it is. And okay, well, that's nice. It's journalistic, but it's not really giving you actionable information. But I really like a comparison that allows me some sort of information. Because say I get blocked 8 times and I tool the block 1 time. Well, then I might say, well, I'm going after the block too much. Okay, then I could readjust. But if I'm tooling the block 8 times for every time that I get blocked, I'm thinking I should do nothing but hit into the block. Yep. So I that's was making me think about that when you were saying that. Another thing that was making me think, it really kind of dawned on me as you were saying, kids might go for years without getting blocked. 2 things. A, is this one of these hidden traps to starting too early? We've talked about that a little before, and I don't know if we have full time to dive into this. This is a podcast topic worthy of its own podcast. Is it actually beneficial for kids to start playing volleyball very early? Sometimes I think it is. Sometimes I think that there's some hidden traps. And this may be one of them, because the game is just quite a bit different. And then sometimes kids struggle to make that leap. Or is this a cause for more age-integrated, age-diversified play? Meaning if I'm 12 and I get a chance to play with some 15 or 16-year-olds, or I play with my older sister or my mom or my dad, and I see that being blocked is part of the game, maybe I don't feel as weird about it when it starts happening to me. So what are your thoughts on just that kind of age mixing and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the age mixing, and I'm a big fan of getting your younger teams to go look at your best players at a tournament. You have a big multi-day, you get your 12s to go watch your 18s, and you go see the Division 1 stud that's like player of the year in your area. And she's playing, and she's going to make mistakes. Like nobody plays perfect volleyball. And in the last 2 years, we had two girls. That one was 6'5" outside hitter. The other one is a freak of a middle. And everybody in the gym was like, "Wow, they can really crush balls." And all the little kids would like watch them in practice and just be like mesmerized. But you take them out into the tournament, and there's girls their size on the other side of the net. And oh yeah, you saw Sarah get blocked there. How did she react to that? Well, she just kind of laughed, shrugged her shoulders, and asked for the ball again. Okay, great. Like that's an attitude that we want to foster in our gym. Is just all right. I can do this. I made a mistake, or it wasn't what I should have done, or it doesn't really affect me. I don't get sad because I get blocked, and or aced or miss a serve or whatever it is. How to deal with that failure mentality is important in sports. And yeah, I think having younger players mix with older players to see their attitudes, to see how they pick each other up, how they can be supportive. I think those are all great modeling tools that you should definitely look at in your gym on how to do it and how to make sure that happens.
Yeah, I think just in general, volleyball players don't watch enough good volleyball. If you look at your average, I would say like, your high school basketball player spends probably much more time watching elite basketball players than they do high school basketball players. Your average high school volleyball player is probably spent 100% of the time watching high school volleyball. It's not uncommon that a high school volleyball player has never watched a high level volleyball match, a match really higher than high school. And that's not uncommon when I go to a college gym or a high school gym or a club gym. When I ask questions, hey, who here has watched a college match? Out of 12 players, maybe 4 raised their hand. So how do you know if it's possible? Like that's just one thing that I think about. It's like, and I've started to do that more and more when I do camps, when I run stuff for high school and club programs. I'll sometimes start the session with watching a college match from the NCAA tournament or the Olympics or something like that. Um, you know, just this past week, this past summer, I did a camp for a program up in Connecticut, and at lunch we watched BYU Texas from the Elite Eight a couple of years ago. With Ronnie Jones Perry was the star outside hitter for that BYU team, and I got a chance to work with her a little bit. She's just a phenomenal athlete, phenomenal person, and all that. And there is a couple times, you're playing against Texas, you're going to get blocked. That's that is just a good team on the other side of the net. It's just an awesome match by both sides. They battle back and forth, and there's so many on both sides. There's so many learning moments on both sides. But there's a couple swings, and it might be game one or game two. Whenever BYU is down and Ronnie Jones Perry just gets absolutely roofed. And the next set, the next ball, it's an out of system pass, and she's got this high bump set from across the court. And, it's like every high school player just tips that ball in. And she just goes up a little higher and a little harder and blasts it right through the hands and gets a kill. And then BYU ends up closing the set out. And I really felt that watching, we would watch it at lunch. And I really felt that watching some stuff like that and just kind of pointing it out. I really felt that helped the girls when they would come back out in the afternoon and just be, like you said, okay, when I get blocked, the solution is not to be either like kind of sad or awkward or like worry about how I'm feeling. And the solution is also not like, oh, yeah, everything's okay, not a big deal. It's actually to just maybe get a little angry and be like, okay, the solution is not to back down. The solution is to go even a little bit harder. And, Dan, he even talked a little bit about how there's some psychological aspects and hormonal aspects that go into the competitiveness of athletes there. And, you'll have to come to the webinar to find out maybe more a little bit about that. But he referenced the book Top Dog, which is a book by Ashley Merriman. So it's kind of an interesting book about how the hormonal effects of competition affect success and failure. So it just, obviously that's something that we need to be conscious of with kids, when they get beat, is there a solution to go back a little harder or is it to back down, and That's tough. It's tough to teach.
Yeah, it's big on the coach to keep trying to foster that attitude. You got to keep supporting it, and you got to be unwavering in that support. And that's a tough thing.
And I like what you said. You referenced this earlier. Some of this stuff, coaches probably have a limited ability to improve it, but they have a very high ability to take it away. So like if you're trying to stimulate this aggressiveness attitude, it takes a long time to instill, and it probably just takes the athlete getting into that mentality themselves and having success with it before they start to trust it. But you can really degrade it very quickly by, like, as you said, when they do get blocked in that crucial moment, if you're getting all over them about getting blocked, yeah, okay, well, then all the words that you said are now meaningless, because they know that what really matters is to not get blocked in that crunch time and just tip it in or roll the ball in, because then if the other team gets a kill, well, it's the defender's mistake who gets blamed for the loss and not me. So I thought that was a valuable point that you talked about there.
Yep, for sure.
What other notes do we got about this? I have a note. I have one other note. This is a change in topic, and we're running a little long here, but whatever. Our millions of viewers don't mind a little extra thought. I'm wondering about, you are really creative about some constraints-based approaches. You think a lot about that, about how, okay, my direct implicit feedback, okay, that's nice as a coach, and that instruction is nice. But if we can engineer drills so that the player has no choice but to do this type of play or do this technique or do this mentality to succeed, that's even better, the constraints-based approach. So do you have any thoughts about that, as it relates to instilling kind of a more aggressive attacking mentality?
Yeah. I think I'll preface it with saying that, or I don't even think it's preface. I think there's technical and then there's competition. And you're either focused on the competition or you're focused on the technical. And if you're going to get into a competition-based drill, I think there should be very little feedback on the technique side, and it should just be more about the attitude. So, I talk about some stuff, but I don't want it to be mistaken as, just throw away a 4-step approach, going small and slow to big and fast, and using a good double arm lift to jump and hit. I think that's very important. But if we're getting into some competition stuff, I've been thinking about it a lot. Next time I get into the gym, hopefully soon, but who knows?
Now, John, not to derail you.
Yeah.
But if your technical feedback can piss a player off, that could be the key to unlocking their aggressiveness. You and I are both thinking of a particular player we once coached in club who I was just riding this girl like about her transition or something all practice. And, I was overcoaching for sure. And in the middle of a rally, I'm saying, turn it on, I'm saying something like that. And she turns and looks at me and goes, I'm trying. And then jumps up and hits the hardest ball she's ever hit in her life. And I said, well, now you've just given me the feedback that I need to just piss you off all practice, because that was the most amazing hit I've ever seen.
I felt bad for the player on the other side who just had a ball wrapped around her face.
So it's possibly that if we can just infuriate our players enough, they will be aggressive. No, sorry to cut you off, but when you get into competition, okay.
Yeah, I think it's got to be a competition. I think one of the big issues with constraints-based approaches with volleyball versus some other sports is just the variation of what you're going to do because of the system that we're in. We're not going to run all this crazy footwork and move these players all around the court out of, a standard kind of 6-on-6 thing when you're playing 6-on-6. You're not going to very rarely are you just going to say, hey, no blockers, 6 people in the back row, and then whatever. There's some fundamentals of the game that makes it a little bit tough. But I think the biggest thing that I've found that works is scoring and limiting their choices. So I thought Dan had a great idea or what he does in his gym is like a 30-second block of, hey, you got to hit the ball as hard as you can. And if you don't, we're just going to add 15 seconds to the drill. That's a good way of doing it. Another way would be atonement balls. If you're scrimmaging some 6-on-6, if you're playing some speed ball 3s or 4s or 6s, where you got a lot of fast-paced stuff going on, hey, we're gonna you roll a ball, you should jump and hit. Here, I'm going to toss you 3 balls. You got to hit those balls as hard as you can. And if you don't hit one of those, you roll it. Well, I'm going to toss you another one. We're going to make sure that it's known to you that this is the way that we're going to play, and this is what we're going to push. And then, thinking about a specific drill, maybe you got 2 blockers on the side of the net, you got a libero passing, you got an outside, you got a setter. First ball is an easy serve for a pass, don't pass for the outside. They got to hit against 2 blockers, and maybe second ball would be a transition of some sort. And you can kind of have all your outsides kind of going through those. And it's a competition. Who can get 3 tool kills before they get blocked twice, stuff blocked twice?
Yep.
Something in that kind of manner where the only way to score is to swing at the block, and you're okay with other stuff. They're going to figure it out. But it also would be a great time if you and an assistant, say this is a club team, you got 10 kids, you got your outsides, your libero, you probably have 2 or 3 middles or right side. You can kind of be working on some blocking. That'd be a great time to work on some technical stuff on your blocking while your hitters are working on, hey, I'm not scared of this, these 6-foot kids on the other side, and they're trying to figure out how to do that. So, those are the kind of things that I would be thinking about. Or if you're playing some 6-on-6, you get 2 points for a stuff block or 2 points for a tool off the block. So you're incentivizing that behavior in the scoring. And hopefully, your players are mature enough to understand, or they're competitive enough that they're trying to win anyway. There's enough intrinsic motivation. So they're thinking about the game in a slightly different way. So you're incentivizing the intention and the behavior that you want them to work on.
Yeah, I feel like I've had some success with stuff where a hitter has to score into a certain area of the court. So you play like a half court long ways game against 2 blockers, because there's usually a fair amount of possibility that a blocker is going to touch that ball. I think with younger kids, something that's worth considering is playing on a lower net. Mm-hmm. Even as old as 13 and 14. Depends a little on the level of your 14. If you're talking about like a high level, really high level 14s club team, where you have a lot of kids who are, in the 6-foot range who are way up there, okay, maybe you don't need to play on a lower net. But I think that there's a lot of value to playing on a lower net. And the way that I like to think about it is just like kind of have your kids block, like just do some block jumps. If nobody's wrists are over the net, you're just not really you're not playing above the net. And I certainly think it's tough for club coaches because you have to go and you have to play by the rules that your federation has. So you can't just do no regular volleyball. And your team will really be prepared for the competition, and that will be frustrating for them. But I think it's really worth like just doing some hitting on a lower net with younger kids, so they feel what it feels like to actually like go up and hit the ball down and hard without having to like hit the ball up over the net. And likewise, then there's actually a chance to get some blocks. So I think it's worth just having some play on lower nets. For kids there, it's something that I think is worthwhile. I think it's just kind of one of the other things as we get into high school. You heard Dan Fisher say it. I've heard so many coaches say it. Colleges are recruiting arms. They want kids who can hit the ball hard. I think just in general, I think sometimes kids think that college coaches are watching their errors more than they are. And I think that in general, college coaches would rather see a player make a few really nice plays, even if it means they made a few errors, than to just play it safe. So I think that's worth telling our kids that. Sometimes it's hard to get them to believe stuff like that, but
yep.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I was doing with a U14 team this year, we had some big kids. We're very big believers and everything's got to be past that hit. But hey, we got some 13, 14-year-old setters. So how many perfect sets are they getting after a while? Yeah. And, we always have these conversations about, hey, block versus random practice. And I was just like, hey, I want you to hit some balls as hard as you can. I'm just going to give you some coach thoughts. Just put that ball right in front of you, and I want you to hit it hard as you can. Show me how hard you can bounce the ball. Didn't do it for a whole practice. Did it for 5 minutes. Hey, I want you to crank these balls. And then we went into some, 15 minutes of beach hitting, trying to hit the targets and stuff like that. But sometimes just getting that feel, like you said, lower net, or just a coach toss of, hey, here's the perfect set with no block. How hard can you hit this ball? Can you hit it harder? Okay, show me. What do you got? What do you got? Just kind of get that little hype game going. Just kind of opens their eyes of like, oh, that's what it's supposed to be. Like big time swings. Okay, I think that's just another little thing that you can throw in there that doesn't need to be 5 hours worth of practice, but a little bit of letting you just crush the ball as hard as you can. Makes you feel pretty good. So.
Yeah. I think that's kind of interesting. I think just sometimes as just constantly, I find how often my coaching mistakes, which are many, are due to assumptions, just faulty assumptions. Well, I'm assuming that this 13-year-old understands what going up and crushing a ball generally looks like, and that is one of the goals of volleyball. Maybe she has never really seen anybody hit it hard. She doesn't understand that that's even a thing. Maybe she just thinks you just, it's don't let the ball hit the ground, kind of deal. So I think that's kind of interesting. Just every now and then an occasional bounce contest, maybe.
Yep.
Yeah. Like it. Awesome. You got any more notes?
No, I think that covered the basics of what I liked and how I was thinking about it.
Good. Yeah. I think that there's some good takeaways there. And hope anybody who's interested, shoot me an email. It's joe.trinzi@gmail.com. Tweet at me at the Volleycast, or you can go on scoutvb.com. You can check out some of these webinars we got. I'm trying to bring in basically I'm trying to connect with the coaches that I want to learn from and ask them the questions that I want to ask them. But fortunately, somehow I find that that's also people that other coaches want to learn from, and usually some questions that they learn from too. And like I said, we keep these webinars to a limit of 20 people, so that they can really be a dialogue and a conversation rather than just listening to somebody talk. That's my goal, is to have as little of that and as much of a conversation as possible. And like I said, I know that like some programs or whatever, if it was your club or if it was your college, so there's some issues with that. Just don't let that be an issue. My goal is to try to just connect and synthesize this information and connect coaches with other coaches as much as possible. I'm trying to get one going every week. We got them booked through almost the end of May. We got Nate coming up this weekend. We got Ben Josephson and Joe coming up the next weekend after that, reconnecting with Tom Black. And we're going to talk about actually kind of like I need to figure out a more exciting way to phrase this, but staff management. That kind of sounds very dry and boring, but basically just like sharing some best practices on roles of head coach and assistant coach and offensive trainer, defensive trainer, setting coach, defensive coach, recruiter, and then on the club side, various roles and high school, and how that just applies to all different levels, and how to manage and do your jobs more effectively. Find that that's something that is difficult for a lot of coaches, especially as they go into college coaching, especially as they go from assistant to head coach. That can be pretty difficult. So we'll have that, and then after that, we have Brittany Dildine from University of Wisconsin. Somebody I've wanted to connect with a while. I've been just really curious about just Wisconsin in general. Really successful program, and that coaching staff. Well, her and Kelly Sheffield have been together since Dayton. They had a lot of success at Dayton. They moved up to Wisconsin, had a lot of success. So I've been really following them and studying them. So I'm excited to talk to her about defense. And let me know. Tweet at me, email me. Let me know who else you want to hear from, who else you want to connect with as a coach. And I will do my best. I'll do my best to give the people what they want. All right, John. Thanks for joining me. Everybody, thanks for listening. Stay safe. And all that. Take care.